Veterans Day is just around the corner, November the 10th, 2025, actually. And there are a lot of veterans in the United States who served in the Iraq War, and a war that was controversial then as it remains to this day. It is my pleasure to welcome Michael Pack to The Truth today. He is a director and filmmaker that has produced dozens of documentaries, and he's the president of Manigold Productions and Palladium Pictures. The last 600 meters, the topic of today's interview, won the highest awards at the GI Film Festival in Washington, D.C., and the Hudson Institute Film Festival in New York City. Wow, I don't get to talk to movie makers very often. Michael, welcome to The Truth.
Thank you. It's good to be on with you, John.
Well, thanks for coming on. So tell us about your movie, or your film, rather, documentary, which will be on PBS on Veterans Day, if I understand correctly. Tell us what the inspiration was, what motivated you to make it, and a little bit about it.
Great. Well, it'll actually be on Veterans Day Eve. It'll be broadcast nationally on PBS all over the country at 10 p.m. November 10th, the day before Veterans Day. And it also happens to be the 250th birthday of the Marine Corps. And the battles we focus on are largely Marine battles. So that's really a perfect time for it. And we're honored that PBS is having us represent the veterans in the military at that time. So the film tells the story of two battles, or three battles really. The first battle of Fallujah, the Battle of Najaf, and the second battle of Fallujah in 2004. And these are the biggest battles America fought since Vietnam. And it's our intention to tell the story from the ground truth, what it was like to fight them, the story of the battles. As if we were telling the story of, say, Gettysburg or Iwo Jima or any other battle. It's not about the politics of the war. You are quite right, John. It's controversial at the time, and it's controversial today. But we tell the story of what it was like to fight that war. So the film is called The Last 600 Meters because a Special Forces sniper says, "I don't make foreign policy, I deliver the last 600 meters of it," meaning what he could see through a sniper scope. And that's what our film is really about. And you're right, there are a lot of veterans of that war. I don't really think they get their due. I mean, people have mixed feelings about the war, but whatever you think about the war, we ask these young men and women to risk their lives and in some sense some cases give their lives to serve us and our country, and they should be honored. And we feel strongly that the right way to honor veterans is to talk about what they did in battle. You know, people talk a lot about PTSD and their difficulties coming home and medical problems and Haditha and Abu Ghraib and all legitimate subjects, but they want to be remembered for what they and their comrades did in battle. And that's what we try to do in this 90-minute documentary.
Well, good for you for doing that. You know, I visited the Roosevelt Hotel in New York a couple of years ago and interviewed people that claimed that they were there for, well, they didn't claim, our president and the administration claimed that they were there for political asylum. I asked them why they left their country of origin. And to a person, they said because they wanted to come to the United States for better opportunity. None of them said they were fleeing because of political persecution. And so then I walked from there to my hotel about 5 blocks away, and I encountered three homeless people on the street, 2 of whom were veterans. And they felt that they had been hugely dishonored and unappreciated because here we got a bunch of immigrants living in a plush hotel and getting food and motorcycles and daily stipends, and they don't have food, clothing, or shelter. And I just don't feel like we've ever really treated our veterans very well, maybe since World War II. And then I'm not sure, I wasn't old enough to see what kind of treatment we provided them. But certainly the Vietnam veterans that came back didn't feel that we were welcomed them with our arms open and here to support them.
Indeed, it's almost the same phenomenon. You know, people took out on the veterans their feelings about the war. So you're right. I think they are not really treated properly. But I think that if your listeners watch the film, they will be impressed by this group of veterans. I mean, I think to only focus on these veterans that are homeless or that are have severe mental problems or drug problems. I mean, they need our sympathy and help. But we should also focus on what people did. I mean, we have the Second Battle of Fallujah in our film culminates in this firefight at Hell House, and so they're clearing Fallujah house to house, street by street, knocking on doors, trying to deal with insurgents or civilians. You don't know what you're going to find when you kick through the door. And one of these houses, a group of insurgents that were in an upper story pinned a group of Marines in the ground in crossfire. And another group of Marines had to cross that kill zone 4 times to pull them out to safety. And many of them, of course, severely wounded. And so to go in and rescue them because of having to push through these bars, they had to take their Kevlar off and go into these houses. And these are heroic stories, and they're very moving stories. And I think it's worth looking at that too, not just the veterans that are suffering, but what they did in battle and how they got to be suffering in the first place by going through these things. I mean, we do not soft sell the horrors of war. I mean, one tanker officer talks about the smell of Fallujah, the decaying bodies, the charred bodies. There's a shot of a dog wandering through, feasting on the dead bodies in Fallujah. I mean, it's not a pretty picture. And you can see why those veterans that come back, are struggling to deal with these images that have been burned into their brain. That on one hand. On the other hand, a lot of their action is heroic. And we made this, the battles took place in 2004. We shot these interviews in 2006, a long time ago, when these soldiers and Marines were still young and could really remember what they had just done. We completed it a few years later, and it's been a long battle to get it on PBS. Although its principal funder was the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and I've had 15 films on PBS. This one they rejected for a while, 17 years, as too pro-military.
Like there's something wrong with being pro-military, supporting people that have risked their lives and given their lives to preserve and protect our freedoms that we have in this country. And that's why PBS needs to be defunded.
Well, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting has been eliminated. I don't think PBS and NPR are going to go on. And I still hope that we hold them to some kind of standard. But I have to say that in part because of critiques like yours, over 17 years later, they have decided to broadcast it. And I do give credit to the president of PBS who reversed the 17 years of decision to put it on the air. So we're getting it on the air, and we've reached out to all the veterans in the film. I had promised them 17 years ago I would get it nationally broadcast, and I guess now I have finally lived up to my promise. And they all want to see it, and they want to show it to their families. I mean, a lot of them, for the reasons that you kind of alluded to earlier, have trouble talking about the war and the things they did in the war. And this is sort of a way to communicate it to both their families, and the purpose of the film is to communicate it to civilians like myself. So I'm honored that it's on now. It's been a struggle to get it on the air, but I'm honored that it's going to be on PBS just before Veterans Day. And I think it fulfills a big purpose of honoring these particular veterans that, you're right, they're in a bigger group of veterans that really need to be honored and respected. Whatever you think of the war, it has nothing to do what you think of the war.
Well, I appreciate your persistence, and I appreciate your working and putting it together. I'm just curious, I don't think that anyone on this earth, including the people that did it, believed that there were weapons of mass destruction. And it is my considered belief that they knew there were not weapons of mass destruction, unless the CIA just set them up, which some people hypothesize may have been the case. But if I were a young guy and I was called into battle and I was told that we were going to fight this war because there were weapons of mass destruction that Saddam Hussein was going to use to commit genocide against his own people and neighboring countries, I would feel a calling to do so. And then to learn after the fact that there were no WMD and that they knew there were no WMD, I don't know, Michael, but there's nothing that triggers me more than to be lied to. And I feel like it was a huge, huge lie that ended up costing many families, moms and dads, their sons and daughters. I don't think it's defensible.
Well, it's not the only lie that we've had to deal with in recent years,
We can talk about them if you'd like. I've got the list.
or intelligence failures even. But
Yeah.
I think that the people, young men, and their own. There's one woman, a Special Forces Air Force uh, um, pilot in the film, but they're other than that, men, young men. I think that they were at the time. This is 2004, feeling not only were they there because of weapons of mass destruction, but they felt that they were stopping terrorism. The memories of 9/11 were still fresh. They felt they were eliminating, stopping, radical Islam, and they were making this country better and helping this country. I think what's really depressing is, then you leave and a lot of those gains are wiped out. I mean, especially, maybe less so in Iraq, but especially in Afghanistan, where the Taliban simply took over all over again. I think that is very discouraging.
It would be okay with me if Colin Powell had testified before Congress that we were going to Iraq because they were harboring and sponsoring terrorists. What's the matter with that? That's a perfectly legitimate objective. But the fact of the matter is, they told us something entirely different. Saddam Hussein's got WMD. We're going in and finding them. And then we captured Saddam Hussein. I don't remember the circumstances. Did we kill him?
I don't remember either. I don't think so, but I think he died shortly thereafter.
He died shortly thereafter. Anthony, fact check that. See what happened to Saddam.
He was in what they called a spider hole.
Oh, we gave him back to the Iraqis or Iranians? Did you say Iraqis? And they hanged him.
Yeah, that's right.
I tell you, you talk about intelligence failures, and I'm not being contentious with you. I'm just being truthful with you. That they blamed security failures for Butler. When you add all the security failures up, at some point the failures become clearly intentional. And I'm not convinced that the Iraq war was not intentional. And I'm not sure that it wasn't for greed over the oil and a strategic place for the U.S. to be able to set up shop, which, restoring and maintaining peace in the Middle East is a legitimate interest of the United States. I think the Iraqi people should have had a say in that. But don't you? I mean, I'm wondering what your thoughts are.
I think that's right. I mean, and that's particularly true in Afghanistan, where we made a deal with the Taliban and didn't really adequately involve the Afghan government that we were supposedly supporting. But I think our film actually looks at these shifting political demands on these troops from the ground level. And in this microcosm, I think you can see some of the themes that you were talking about. So, the first Battle of Fallujah, it begins, you may remember this, when four Blackwater contractors were killed, burned, dragged through the streets of Fallujah, then hung on a bridge. And so it was determined that we had to clear the insurgents out of Fallujah. So into Fallujah, the military went. And it was harshly criticized, especially on Al Jazeera, as violent and disproportional. And so in light of all that criticism, the government, the political leaders decided to pull us out of Fallujah. And Fallujah then became a safe haven for Al-Qaeda insurgents. And we were not allowed to go in. It was like the Fallujah Brigade, and it became a arms dump and a site where there were torture chambers, including a beheading. And it got so bad that then, and this is the second Battle of Fallujah, months later, the Marines had to go back in and clear Fallujah. This time, like clearing Fallujah house to house, and in order to avoid the censure for being overly violent, they announced they're going in, and they say all civilians have to leave. So all civilians left, as did the leadership, the insurgent leadership, and went to nearby Ramadi. So the people remaining in Fallujah were insurgent fighters, junior ones, that were planning to kill as many Marines as they could until they died, and they took a lot of drugs, hyped themselves up, and the Marines then cleared house to house and heroically cleared Fallujah, and they had to avoid what civilians were left, very challenging rules of engagement. And then, so then it's a heroic battle, but of course the leadership has gone on to Ramadi, so it's very hard for the people at the tip of the spear to deal with conflicting political demands from Washington. And that was true in another way in our other battle, the Battle of Najaf. So you see, we don't analyze the politics, but you see the impact of unclear mission from Washington and its impact on these soldiers. And I think they found that in a microcosm discouraging. You're ready to, first you're ready to attack, and then you pull back. So it's really, it's asking a lot, and it's putting a lot. It's asking a lot of our soldiers and Marines, and we next time, I hope, are clear on what our goals are, have the means to achieve them, and leave when the goals are achieved. I mean, that's one of the lessons of these wars.
So there are two things I want to talk to you in the short time we've got remaining. First of all, did you find the evidence and incidents of widespread PTSD among the people that you interviewed, or are those isolated cases, or are there is it a epidemic? Where is it on the continuum?
Well, one thing I feel about, since we were focused on these people in these huge battles with their, so I really feel the military people who are actually been in firefights and battles are even in another category of soldier and Marine that we are really indebted to. I mean, obviously, for each person at the tip of the spear, there are lots of people supporting them and providing logistics and other support, and those are people serving the country too. But those that have been in these kind of vicious firefights where they've seen their buddies wounded or killed are, I think, in a different category. And one of them said to me, and I think this is true, that all of them that are in that circumstances have some kind of PTSD. It's like a spectrum from mild to extreme. They're all haunted forever by the nightmares of what they saw. How could they not be? So yeah, I think they all have that, and they struggle to adjust. But now it's been 17 years later. I'm actually going to see them. We're having a screening in Washington, D.C., and many of them are coming, which I'm very grateful to. So I'll see what it's like 17 years later.
When is the screening?
It's on October 30th, day before Halloween in Washington. Come if you're in town, John. If I can get you out of Florida. It's hard to do, I know, for people who are in Florida.
Well, not because of Florida. I'm just really, I wake up, I go to work, I go work as long as I can, and then I go to sleep and do it all over again. But it's something I would really relish the opportunity to do. So let me look and see if that's in the cards. But so we've got a new person at the helm of the Veterans Administration, Doug Collins, who happens to be a friend of mine. Have you seen any change in the way that we're respecting our veterans under his leadership now?
I would say that if I can speak maybe of the Trump administration in this area in general,
Sure.
Him, Pete Hegseth, and the others. Yeah, I think that's right. I think that there is a different relationship to veterans and warriors. I mean, Pete Hegseth talks a lot about the warrior spirit, and you can see it in my documentary. And I think it's frankly part of the reason that PBS did put it on the air this year. I think they have created an actual sea change in the country at large, not only among Trump supporters, but in the country at large. I think it has created a change. So I think that's a positive thing. I hope it lasts.
I agree. And you have generously shared with us a trailer from your documentary. Let's go look at that right now.
It was almost as though there was a boogeyman out there.
We were facing a lot more enemy than we had the capability to deal with.
They dug trenches, they fortified houses. They were ready.
We wanted to go. We were just waiting on the edge of a knife. When are we gonna get to go?
The order is seize the city.
RPGs, small arms fire from everywhere.
Come on. I told him that I wanted to go, and he looked at me and said, "Sergeant, you're gonna die."
The destruction is just horrible.
The hardest thing about fighting this enemy is they're not afraid to die. If they're not afraid to die, then how do you fight them?
Ramp's going down!
Be prepared to start at one end of the city and fight your way through to the other end.
There's firing going on. There are grenades being thrown in the house.
It became hand-to-hand fighting. It was so close.
2 selfless Marines run across this kill zone 4 times to pull Marines out of there.
I wasn't worried about, getting shot or getting wounded. I was worried about the guys to my left and right.
You always want to reassure these men that they've done their duty, because that memory is seared into their soul. They never forget it. None of us do.
Foreign policy, I don't make it. I just deliver the last 600 meters of it.
Man, that's powerful stuff. Michael, thank you. I look forward to watching the long version.
But please let me know what you think of it, John.
That took a lot of work and a lot of resources. How do you? I know you said that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, I guess, buys the documentary from you, but how long did it take to make, and how much money did it take?
Well, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is a funder. They funded it, and now PBS broadcasts it. I mean, it took a few years way back in 2004 to 2006 to 2008 or 9. And then now, 17 years later, we've had to update it and make some changes. So it's really been a long time coming. Yeah, they take a lot of research. It takes a lot. It's both research. I mean, we rely a lot on the work of print journalists who've written books on the subject, and several of them were interviewed in the film. So there's that helping the research. But we had the way we made the film, which is different, I think, than many documentaries on war, is we found the footage of that was the most dramatic from these 3 battles. And then we tried to find the people that were in the footage. So rather than there being interviews and then generic footage, people talk about what they did in the footage that viewers will see. So you feel that you were there. And then it does take a lot of time to get these soldiers and Marines to open up on camera. I mean, there's a certain reluctance. You probably know this yourself from talking to veterans. I mean, they don't really like talking about it.
Yeah. Well, they're heroes, but they are not looking for notoriety or to be celebrated. They think they'd like to be appreciated, but I don't think they want to toot their own horn. Michael, we got to leave it there. Father Time has caught up with us once again, but I thoroughly enjoyed having you on the show, and I hope you'll come to West Palm Beach. And if you do, we'll do a longer sit down in the studio. Thank you, and have a great rest of your weekend, Michael, and best wishes to you.
Thank you very much, John.